Hello, everyone, and welcome to On Record with TAG. Today, we have been joined by Mr. Nader Nadery, a prominent Afghan human rights advocate, reformist, and former senior government official. He has previously served as the Commissioner of Afghan Independent Human Rights Commission. Furthermore, as chairman of the Civil Service Commission, Mr. Naderi has played a key role in shaping post 2001 democratic reforms and building institutional integrity in Afghanistan. He also served on the Afghan government's peace negotiation team in Doha and has been a consistent voice for transparency, inclusion, and human rights. Beyond public office, Mr. Naderi is a respected civil society leader, having founded the Free and Fair Election Foundation of Afghanistan and co-founded the Afghan Civil Society Forum. Now, living in exile after the Taliban's return to power, he continues to speak out on behalf of Afghans, especially women and minorities, at international forums. Mr. Naderi, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. We'll begin with our first question. So the first question is that in the wake of Taliban's return to power in 2021, so how do you assess the current state of governance in Afghanistan in terms of things like institutional functionality, public service delivery, and status of key administrative frameworks that once you had helped shape? Sir, given your experience in the civil service reform, have any elements of the previous state apparatus been adapted under the current regime?
Well, thank you. A very important question. Unfortunately, the governance today in Afghanistan is not based on a set of codified rules. There's no constitution to define the authority of those in power. And there's no constitution to define what rights the Afghan people do have. It is subject to a person's interpretation and regular verdicts or whatever decrees issues the head of the Taliban. Similarly, there is less clarity of the system of laws beyond the constitution, then which system of laws are being applicable. The Taliban did announce nullification of a significant number of laws imitating or based on the constitutional obligation that was previously. So when those are not there, there is a clear presence of ambiguity and confusion in population what to do, what not to do. Then in terms of the governance, it's not, of course, a democratically elected authority. It is highly theological, religious, and it is based on interpretation, a strict interpretation of Sharia law that on occasions goes against the way of their interpretation goes against minority rights and suppression of particularly of other vulnerables, including and especially and particularly the Afghan women, which are the clear victim of it. Now, in terms of delivery of services, education is a major example where half of population are being denied of delivery of educational services. At the same time, the quality of education have gone significantly down, while probably the access to male students have increased because those areas under their control are now, schools are open. At the same time, the health services, the quality have gone significantly down. The scope of delivery of health services are shrinking day by day and is very limited. Development activities are so limited and non-existent in most parts. Because of the budgetary limitations and the aid that was gone, and also the lack of proper planning of the budget. And then we have the issue of, in terms of civil service sector, they have changed entirely the civil service, meaning that the Independent Civil Service Commission was downgraded to be a subsection of their de facto prime minister's office. So it's no more an independent commission, but also they changed its structure of civil service in terms of, we had grade 1, 2 to 6 were civil service employees that were non-political, that were coming through competition. Similarly, like India, we have borrowed a lot. I visited India, and I visited your Civil Service Commission and met the chairman of the Civil Service Commission in Delhi in 2018 to share information and also to see what kind of lesson we can borrow from your system, which is one of the very inspirational system, non-political when it comes to the civil service. That we have built a lot of safeguards for non-political civil service, especially in the last 4 years of the Republic. That's gone. However, they kept parts of the civil service as the civil servants, because those were especially grade 4, grade 3. Those are more technical parts of the administration, and so far they couldn't replace them immediately. They kept part of them. Grade 1 and 2, which are director levels, they were all changed, and politically appointees with no professional background and mostly from mullahs were appointed. So part of it is kept. For example, when public reacted against these untransparent hiring, referring to the system, the highly computerized, sophisticated system for competition we put in place, there was a huge public reaction that why you're not using this system. They started using it back only for grade 5 and 6 and some grade 4, but the rest is being transformed for bad, not for good.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that insight, because, for us being from the outside, it is very difficult for us to understand what might be going on in there right now. Running a government is very difficult, and the fact that they kept some of the civil servants back just goes to show how the job was well done previously. Sir, this brings me to another question of governance, but also geopolitical ramifications. International community is divided in terms of recognizing the Taliban-led government, with countries like China accepting Taliban's ambassador in 2023, but also US and certain European nations, most European nations, they continue to withhold formal recognition. Sir, how does this fragmented approach affect Afghanistan's engagement with global institutions, even if we speak of aid flows, financial aid, and also regional stability?
Well, there is, in contrary, there is an international consensus in not recognizing formally the Taliban, and it's amazing to see that in the last almost 4 years, this informal international consensus, both from Global South and Global North, have kept intact. The region is highly concerned because of the way the Taliban behave, the lack of clear confidence or their ability to build the kind of trust and gave the international community and also especially the region the kind of confidence that they are not going to be going to their routes, which was before coming back to power known being as a terrorist organization. So that have kept the international community in an informal consensus from immediate neighbors to the region to the broader international community to not recognize them formally. However, there's been a lot of regular contacts from China that accepted an ambassador, but immediately announced it does not mean a recognition. The same happened with Iran, the same handover of Afghan embassy in Moscow was done there by the government of Russia. India have established a lot of relation. There's been visitation, to our surprise. External Affairs Secretary being in touch with Taliban. We do understand there are some national interest of India that nudge them to do that, but also there are other questions that need to be answered. So while there is a consensus, but there is also regional dynamic and interests that countries are trying to find one or another way to work with. Another surprise is the relation of Pakistan with the Taliban. Pakistan being the godfather of the Taliban, nurturing them, providing them, enabling them for their terrorist activities and launch a pad for operation against the Afghan democratically elected government and the Afghan population. But now they are at odds with each other. And it shows on one hand how naive Pakistanis were. On the other hand, shows that the Talibs could not be trusted on the words that they are saying. And therefore, one needs to be both pragmatist, as India tries to be on the case with the relation with Taliban, but also need to be so careful to go beyond that pragmatism of daily-based immediate interest issues. Trusting them for the long term is going to bite back, and Pakistan is a very clear example to that end.
Yes, sir. Absolutely resonate with you on the terms of whether Taliban can be trusted long term. And this has shown how diplomatically neighboring countries have been changing their strategies since the Taliban has come back into power. Sir, as you know, you have been a former commissioner of the Afghan Independent Human Rights Commission. We will talk a little bit about the situation of minorities and women as well. Sir, currently, how do you assess the state of human rights in relation to freedom of expression, civil society, and specifically the rollback of women's rights, including ban on education, employment, public participation, even being allowed to navigate public spaces? So, sir, in this context, do you think that there are any meaningful avenues remaining for the international community as well to support Afghan women and human rights more broadly?
Well, this is very unfortunate. One of the very painful outcome of the Taliban return, to me personally, but also the country, is this complete rollback on rights and freedoms of the Afghans. I have spent most of my life, even during the first Taliban regime, that I went to prison because of those advocacy by the Taliban, and post-Taliban. I spent most of my 2 decades in public service in defense of human rights and building institutions for protection of human rights. And unfortunately, I see most of what I have done and could have been my legacy have been rolled back by a suppressive behavior of a regime. So the Bill of Rights chapter of our constitution that guaranteed all the rights and freedoms of the public and the citizens are being abolished entirely. The Afghan Human Rights Commission, Independent Human Rights Commission, which I was part of it, and we built a lot of both the good work and credibility and protecting people's rights, that's been abolished. The laws that was protecting rights and freedoms, for example, freedom from torture, is no more there, and people are being detained, tortured. Freedom of assembly is no more allowed and being restricted significantly. Freedom of association, political parties are entirely banned, and there's no more. On top of all of this, what is so appalling is what most of Afghan women and myself, and I've written about it legally, arguing, they have applied a complete system of gender apartheid in Afghanistan, and that's excluding entirely the population, one segment of the population of Afghanistan, the majority, which are Afghan women. They basically has and literally has no rights. they exist as physically as humans, but they have no protection, no rights to be given. And the irony is that some foreign recently, for example, an American so-called scholar, political, a female visited Afghanistan, and then she have written, Cheryl Bernard, she have written to an American press comparing Afghan women in Afghanistan has better rights than in India, and we were both appalled and shocked, and we it was a sense of deja vu that to laugh at it, and where you compare India with Afghanistan and you say Afghan women and the Taliban has a better right than India. I don't know where she comes from in terms of her thinking, but this is the irony of some of the apologists for the Taliban. But that is a dark part of Taliban's behavior that will be remembered forever. And I'm confident with the advocacy and struggle and fight of Afghan women and the rest of Afghan society, their dark time would end, but that dark cloud of our history would remain. And it is a very dire situation when it comes to human rights. There's a lot of minority rights are being restricted significantly. For example, we have Shia communities in our country. They have been an equal citizen. They should be, and they are. But the Taliban, in terms of their family rights, what our constitution before was saying, that the Shia family matters will be dealt not by Hanafi school of law, school of religion, but by the Jafari school of religion, and that's gone too. So there's no real representation of different ethnic groups into the government of the Taliban either. So it's a very, very dark time when it comes to human rights issues.
Yes, so we spoke of women's rights, we also spoke of minority rights, and also how what we are trying to do with our platform is also try to bring out these perspectives, perspectives that are not talked of a lot. And sir, I want to prod a little bit on the minorities' rights as well. So Afghanistan's ethnic and religious minorities, Shia Muslims, yes, there's Hazaras, there's the Sikhs, sir, and they have been targets of discrimination for a while. Uh, it has gotten worse under the Taliban's leadership, but the persecution has lasted even before. So, how has the situation evolved, and what mechanisms, if any, could exist or could be developed to ensure their protection, domestically, more holistically, or through legal or diplomatic channels?
You're absolutely right. Our history in terms of treatment of minorities, and especially, which I'm embarrassed and ashamed of, our treatment of our Sikh and Hindu communities, have not been satisfactory and concerning to a lot of extent, and especially during civil war, especially from 1990s onward, it has been very, very bad. But in the past 2 decades, prior to the Taliban's return, there's been an opening and an upward mobility, a protection and guarantee of equality, and despite some limitation and societal behavior, there has been legal progressive opportunities, and that's why you see our Hazara community have flourished, and they have both have been in the government, in the politics, in economy, and in media, in academia. They have shown their ability, and they have grabbed that opportunity of space that was created. However, our Sikh and Hindu communities have remained to an extent limited in terms of societal behavior. And I would give you a brief example. The Civil Service Commission, I wanted it to be representative of everybody in the country. So it is for the country, it needs to be from all ethnic groups and also all religious communities of Afghanistan. I was looking for somebody who could have uh, graduated from school, from our Sikh community, symbolically, but also meaningfully, with his turban or her presence. I wanted to make sure that they do exist. However, suppressed, harassed in the Civil War time, their properties were taken, and then their number have shrank because a lot of them left because of the kind of violence against them. I wanted to show that they exist in our community and they must be recognized and they must be respected. It took me a few months to look for and then find somebody who could meet the criteria. Meherwan Singh, who is a best friend of me now, who lives now in India because of what has happened and he had to go. And that moment when after 3 months, looking for somebody with that criteria and could not find, I felt embarrassed and ashamed. And I said it publicly that we have treated as a society, not as a system of law, but as a society, we have limited their access because of how they looked or how they practiced. And they were probably harassed that they didn't go to school. And that's why they couldn't be graduated. And that requires a longer term work. First and foremost, it requires the legal foundation and the legal protection. The previous constitution, the Republic's constitution, have provided that legal foundation for all of that. Our Hindu minorities and Sikh minorities were in the parliament, in the Senate. They had reserved seats. They were given affirmative or through affirmative actions, they were brought into the government. They were advisors to the president. The same for our other ethnic minorities. But the politics of it was one side of it. The legal opportunities were essential. And through an education and a longer term, that issue of discrimination needed to be addressed. We begin, and that 2 decades was the foundation for it, and we needed to expand it and to turn it to a normal practice. Unfortunately, there's an interruption and setback now. One thing that needs to be done, just to add, the international community need to continually focus. However, human rights and the rights of communities are no more part of international deliberation. But I hope the region can continue to champion those. There is the moral authority of international community when it comes to human rights have been affected significantly after what has happened globally in places like Middle East or in Ukraine and other places. Therefore, the region need to champion that, and I think it's time for the region to play that kind of a moral authority role when it comes to issues of human rights and human dignity and protection of minorities and others.
Yes, sir. Taking your message far out, that it's the regional communities that need to champion and talk more about Afghanistan and its conditions and its human rights. Sir, this brings me to we'll take a little bit of a tangent to our discussion. So you have been detained, you have been tortured by the Taliban during the first regime in the 1990s, and these are following formative chapter in your life. Sir, how did these experiences influence your lifelong commitment to human rights and to justice, to institutional reform in Afghanistan? And how do these continue to shape how you view the country today and its future as well?
Well, thank you. As a child, I grown up my first days having my school being burnt, set into fire by then Mujahideen during the 80s. I have seen close up as a child also going to school, rocket hits, and then kids are being killed. So from those early time, there's never been more reasons for me to think of stability peace and progress of my country, and also a protection of human rights and protection of civilians. Those were my real life experience, were examples of it. When I was detained before, just days or months or a year before that, I was doing advocacy for peace, for democratic governance, and that got me to trouble with the Taliban. First, I was coming with peace proposals with the UN, with a group of my classmates and friends and my brother, and we were trying to find a solution in the midst of a civil war, how the UN can play a role, and that got me to trouble. And then, of course, the network at the university, the students that were listening to me, the students that were engaging with me, would become a source of attraction for risk. Taliban felt it threatened. They couldn't tolerate even a small group of people talking about a different future. Now, all of that and going to jail and being tortured there, all of this have somehow shaped my commitment and my resolve to dedicate to what I believed in. And I, throughout all of that, reading, for example, great leaders of globally and in the region, knowing about Gandhiji and reading his life and the troubles that he have gone through, inspired me. Mandela and others in Afghanistan itself, there have been a number of people who I've looked at, and then there need to be in nations' life individuals who need to be ready to shape not only a system of thought but a path, and then risk for it, and to be ready to be risking for it, and to address them. So that's how it was. The daily life of my people, a small thing that I was doing, I was getting more love from the people than what I considered the amount of work that I have done. And this disproportionality of acknowledgement and the amount of work has always been a source of motivation and a source of obligation also to see, okay, our people expects too little, and within that, a good work by them is recognized immediately, and then they appreciate that, and we need more of those kind of people. There were more people like that to do good, and we needed more of it to change the country, and that has always been a source of commitment and motivation.
Yes, so even initially when we were studying you and your profile and your background, it's inspirational the kind of work you've done. But also, the one thing that I wanted to know is what motivated you to come so far. Sir, you have also played a pioneering role in shaping Afghanistan's civil society after 2001, and you founded the Free and Fair Election Foundation. You've also co-founded the Afghan Civil Society Forum. Sir, specifically, what led to the creation of these institutions? Was there a critical moment where you realized that these institutions are needed? And what went into building these institutions?
Well, when post 2001, when the democratic system of governance came in, and it was a new era, and I was just in my early youth, in the 20s, and there was a lot of people who was feeling like me a sense of civic engagement, and we knew that a functioning democracy could not survive or become stronger unless there are independent civil society organizations that shape the people's view and then advocate for it and promote it. And that's when we first gathered a group of, some of them were former NGO workers. I never came from NGO background at that time. I was just being an activist, student activist in that line. And I was probably the youngest among them. And we've defined the Civil Society Forum. There were international experts in the room too, and that they share the experiences of the other places with us. So that was the first need of expanding the citizens' role. But the Free and Fair Election Foundation was primarily found based on a need, and that need was when we had our first democratic elections in 2004, the presidential election. Of course, there was the law provided for independent observers, and a group of civil society activists and scholars came together and said, let's form an observers group. And then the first attempt was okay, but then it was almost falling back. And I then said I would dedicate a significant amount of my time to build FIFA and expand it in a much more systematic way. And that sense of commitment to a much more cleaner, transparent electoral process motivated and become the incentive to form this citizens organization. We deployed in each election around 10,000 observers in number of elections each election. We couldn't cover the entire country, but most parts of the electoral process. And this belief on transparency motivated us, and the commitment to it. It brought a lot of risk too. Our observers got beaten up. Our observers were taken by Taliban in places. I got in trouble with the sitting president because we released the report of the finding of the organization and saying there was fraud. We got in trouble with all most of candidates who were unhappy because of our reporting on fraud, but that was giving more joy to see we're making a difference. If the election commission is forced to review and do investigation on fraud and was announcing it, that was giving us joy, and we're saying we're going toward transparency. However, we didn't achieve all of that. The quality of our elections have gone back from little good to bad, and then even to worse. And it was a combination of factors, both political but also security. But we needed more of those kind of organizations to engage on behalf of the citizens.
So it's critical work that was done. I'm sure this must have brought out more insights into what went on with the elections. I think democratically, conducted elections after such a long time. And so this brings me to a question of now that you are in exile. It's been a while. Sir, how has your advocacy work changed with time? Because you are away from these institutions, these communities, institutions which are no longer in effect as well. But sir, you have helped build these. And now that you're in exile, how has your advocacy work changed? What are the kind of maybe obstacles that you face in engaging with with Afghanistan's political affairs from abroad, and what has been your experience now?
Well, thank you. A very important question. First, the big challenge when you're abroad is that the day-to-day taste of what it is that communities and people go through, and then in that moment, being with them on that moment is what you miss. And that in itself reduces the level of credibility of what you do. I feel bad or even embarrassed when I see Afghan women on the streets doing a rally and protesting for against the policies of the Taliban, that I'm not there with them. And I speak on behalf of them, does not have the same credibility of being with them on that street. So I'm aware and conscious of that shortage, that limitation. And that adds to this sense of pain that comes with exile, with being deprived from your land and from your place. So that doubles that pain. However, what I know that with that limitation, there's also opportunity, that there are things that my people cannot say or do inside the country, and therefore I am in much more freedom to say and do it, to speak of their pain that they cannot share, and do advocacies, go and meet policymakers in different places, in the West, in Europe, or in sometime in the region, in America, in Congress, in policymakers, in different government departments, and in academia. I try to write a lot, do fact-based research, and putting facts on table to make sure that the policymakers read them and do not make another stupid decision that undermines those very women on the street, those very civil society activists inside the country, for their struggle for a freer and better Afghanistan. But I also am in consistent touch with my people in different corners of Afghanistan. Thanks to technology, I try to update myself. I try to share my knowledge or my experiences with the youngsters. I try to encourage them to non-violent building up, bottom up. I try to encourage them to do different ways of working for a future and reform. So it's different. So if I shorten it, one part of it is advocacy for Afghanistan that I do with policymakers, lawmakers in Europe, in America, and beyond, and in the region when I can travel. The second part of it is informing based on the facts and evidence, and that's when I write, and I try to inform and engage in think tanks and others, and I also do through media interviews and that. And third, I do some direct work with the youth and people inside the country.
Yes, sir. So, sir, advocacy with policymakers, evidence-based research, interactions with the media, and also staying in touch with the people who are still there. So, lessons to learn. Sir, I want to talk a little bit now about geopolitics of it and the relationships with the immediate neighbors. Sir, you already spoke of Pakistan, you've mentioned Iran, you've mentioned China. But sir, now the relations of Afghanistan with these countries are still evolving. And how much of these relations do you think are driven by security concerns for each of these countries, and how much of it is geopolitical opportunism, pragmatism? How do you think about the international relations in these aspects?
Well, I see them in two groups. One group of immediate neighbors and the region are purely based on a very pragmatist, security-driven interest engagement. I would put India as one of those. It is, but at the same time, geopolitically, when India sees that there's bad relation between Kabul and Islamabad, then of course it is geopolitical interest that drives that too. And I may open a parenthesis there, that how some of Afghans have felt disappointed and a hard feeling have emerged, which after the collapse of the Republic, India have revoked visas for most of Afghans who were either in India for education or who were in Afghanistan and having families, or they resided in India, were going forth and back. Having that kind of people-to-people relation was very much heartfelt and developed a very hard feeling among Afghans that why we have been going to this, counting on this friendship for so long at the cost of our bad relation, at the cost of a relation with Pakistan. We trusted India as people, and now when is the worst of our time. India does this. Our cadets who were getting training in India, lost their visas. Their visas were revoked, and they were at the risk of being sent. And they were sent, and it was not clear what the Taliban would have been done with them at those moments. So there is a significant buildup of hard feeling. Yes, countries make decisions based on their national interest, but I think this was something that I needed to say. So part of it is driven by security. Part of it is geopolitical interests too. I spoke about India, but also in this issue, the global big power competition, while not so much centered around Afghanistan anymore compared to a decade and a half ago, but it is the sphere of influence. So you see Russia, it's still considered Central Asia as its southern borders, and insecurity in Afghanistan and the terrorist threats which still exist. A significant number of terrorist organizations still operating, training, building up in Afghanistan under the space created by the Taliban. Central Asian countries are also nervous from that. So for Russia, especially in this rivalry, new rivalry or renewed rivalry between West and Russia, it sees as one of the sphere of its influence. China also see that as its both geopolitical and security sphere of interest, and that's also creating a dynamic. While China has been so careful with recognition of the Taliban, or dealing with them, keeping them in good relation, but not completely diplomatically normalizing that relation. And China's relation with Pakistan, that converge of geopolitical interests also creates a dynamic in the region. Iran basically looks at especially the security concerns that they have vis-a-vis Daesh and others, but also there's this belief among Russia and Iran and some other countries that Daesh is created by United States, and therefore it's an element of their foreign policy tool, and we need to get with the Taliban closer to deal with the Daesh threat. So those are, I don't say that based on fact, that it is as such, because I was part of a government that we were fighting with Daesh, and Americans were with us to fight with Daesh, and I think it's a misplaced assumption, but the security risk and threats are there. Some of them think if they leave the space open, probably the West would come back. And that's how the nervousness and the geopolitical dynamic is being created.
Okay, sir. Noted, sir. Sir, you've spoken of all the close by countries that have very huge impact on the Central Asian and the Middle East. All of these countries have huge impacts, whether that is trade, whether that is defense, all of this. Sir, I would just want to prod and pick your brain a little bit more on how has this international community continue to deliver humanitarian aid and support and human rights, and whether that is coming from Central Asia, whether that is coming from the West. There is a view that it tends to create more instability. It tends to fund the wrong networks, and sir, without conferring legitimacy on the Taliban regime, is there a viable model? Maybe it can be conditional aid, it can be third-party implementation, it can be multilateral coordination. But how do you think maybe financial aid there can be a better structure to it?
Yeah, unfortunately, the aid, or the majority of aid, comes from to Afghanistan from the Western sphere. So it is European, Americans, and then Japan and Australia and Canada. So that continues to be the case, unfortunately. However, the amount of aid is being declined. So that is, especially now, US aid and the entire United States aid to Afghanistan is going to be come to zero by end of next month. And that will have significant economical consequences to Afghanistan's and Afghans, a lot of them who are struggling on daily basis because of the bad economy of the country and lack of investment and restriction and increasingly multiple taxation applied imposed by the Taliban. So that's going down. However, there are a number of sectors that would require, and it is essential to be provided. The health sector especially requires a continuation of aid. The modality, there's been other countries with similar situation where illegitimate or unrecognized governments are in place, but the population need not to be punished for it. And therefore, one modality is that if the UN or through the World Bank baskets, they continue to provide aid, it needs to be distributed not through the government channels, purely through third-party, either private sector or non-governmental organizations. Second, there need to be a proper monitoring mechanism to verify, to monitor, and that need to be independent of the implementers. And in this case, currently in Afghanistan, the UN implements the projects and the UN monitors it also. So there is a conflict of interest that need to be impartially, independently verified, monitored. If there is aid money going to the Taliban, to the government, that need to be highlighted and be routed. Third, the international community, I've written about it too, need to get a consensus among themselves to get a formal commitment from the Taliban on non-interference in the aid delivery, on non-taxation on any activity related to aid. So that way, the efficacy of the aid will increase. And I think the region need to also engage in provision of aid to the people. I do know and follow that some of the regional countries do provide like medical supplies occasionally, 1 or 2 times. India provided since the last 4 years, a couple of times wheat to Afghanistan, which is also critical. The same need to be. China did a couple of times in terms of medical supplies they provided, but they do through government, and that need also through the Taliban government. That the impact of it is more to Taliban rather than the public, and the goodwill between people to people need to be established.
Yes, sir. So basically, financial aid should be monitored properly, should be given out properly, should be implemented properly, and as much as possible, least government interference. Yes. Sir, this brings me to one of my closing final questions. Sir, given the current political climate and the collapse of democratic structures, do you see a realistic pathway for the re-establishment of democracy and democratic institutions in Afghanistan? If so, what would that look like? And what internal changes are needed within the Afghan civil society for this to be more permanent?
A very critical question. So a short answer to it is that no repressive regime around the world have lasted for long, and especially in a country with a very limited resources and a very diverse people. Dictatorship, be it religious dictatorship or any other way, authoritarian regime cannot survive. It may last under pressure for a while, but it would not be there for long. So what is happening is that the Taliban themselves, through their repressive exclusionary conduct are building up the seeds of or the elements of their own collapse. That's for sure. That's so the Afghanistan's history is a testimony to it. I've been in government and I know my people that even if you are so much humble to them, they're still want a very equal treatment, equal seat, and they cannot accept being instructed. So for a while, by the barrel of a gun, you can suppress them, but not for long. So that's the first one. The second one is that the past 20 years have generated enough both knowledge and capacity and ability in Afghan society that in itself becomes the source of a change, not in short term, but in mid to long term, that would result in bringing about the change. So my answer that yes, there will be a democratic Afghanistan in the future, and the way to achieve that is, the way I see it, is one, working and building on what has been there and nurturing it to strengthen from bottom up. A pressure need to be built bottom up. Both elders, community leaders, civil society activists, religious leaders who are very unhappy with this, that need to show strength and build up, and that's happening slowly, gradually, and would reach there. The second one, those structured civil society, inside or outside, they need also to become realistic amplifier of the Afghan voices, so that voices are not crushed immediately by violence of the Taliban, but allowed to expand. And that need to create the kind of right balance on realistically where the activists are not harmed and not, I've been in jail and I know what's happening if somebody is taken by Taliban in jail. So don't put them at risk. And that's another important element. And third, the approach of civil society has been only raising a voice, which is an important element of it, but then mobilization has not been yet there. That mobilization at the community level, which is part of a bottom-up work, needs to happen. But then also informing the region, which currently plays a significant and important role, to remain consistent in one element, and that theological unicolor of the Taliban regime is not for the good of security of the region, and is not primarily good for the people of Afghanistan either. And that they would continue pressing for Taliban to change. Otherwise, they would not be recognized as a legitimate government. So it's a mid to long-term work, and it requires a lot of rethinking and creativity on all these levels.
Okay, sir. Sir, this is all the insights that you've given us. They bring us closer to Afghanistan in terms of just being able to understand what is going on, what is happening to the people, and how things can be done better. So one question I have is very open-ended. You can answer it however you like. What is the one thing that you feel the world needs to understand about Afghanistan and its people? It's something that may be misunderstood and that you think, is very important for people to know and understand.
That Afghans are like any other people in this world. Don't say that they are tribal, religious people, and they don't like democratic governance. Understand them and see them as any other people in the world. They are people who doesn't like democracy, but they are a majority of people, and entirely the Afghans love to have a voice in their government. They also, like any other people, want a better life. Don't give up on saying, oh, because this is how Afghan society has been, and therefore if their women are suppressed, it's okay. It's not okay. It's not okay for Afghans. It's not okay for those women in the districts, in the villages, and it shouldn't be okay for you and to misjudge and say, because it's Afghanistan, it should be okay. So we are like any other people. We love beauty. We love a better life. We love music like any other people. We love our women too. My daughters, I love them to be as successful as anybody else, to be an astronaut and to be a doctor, to be a physicist, or whatever they wish to be. So there's, and it's the same. It's not me educated, but my four relatives in a four corner of either Nimroz or Lakman feels the same way. So don't judge us differently.
So with that, we come to the end of this interview. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for all your insights. I think it is part of a very crucial and broader discussion on bringing stability back to Afghanistan. Thank you so much for joining us, and you are watching the Asian Chronicle. Thank you.